You do not have to be fearless. You just have to be brave. Don't think that people that achieve something great in life have no fear. They do. They just choose to be brave and step forward through those challenges anyway. So if you can channel that bravery and let fear be there, you got the tools you need to get through those things.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. I am so excited to be back here this week with another inspiring story, and this one is a really cool one. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Jilyne Jarvis, co-founder and executive director of Z Girls. Z Girls is a nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping young girls with confidence with lessons from incredible and inspiring athletes. Brianna Decker, Missy Franklin, Sue Bird, Ashley Wagner, Natasha Hastings, and so many others. I encourage you to go and check out their website, and you're just going to be blown away by the athletes and these incredible women that are involved in Z Girls, and they're all volunteers. I want to learn confidence from these badass women. They're incredible. Z Girls is starting a revolution. In a world where 7 in 10 girls believe they are not good enough, they are breaking the cycle of girls experiencing self-doubt and insecurity. Z Girls is equipping girls with the tools and perspectives they need to be confident, centered, and courageous. With the support from sports psychologists and mental health experts, they developed their impact-driven Z Girls curriculum to create a world where every girl has the courage and mental skills to live with zero limitations. Jilyne herself is a 7-time NCAA All-American and former U.S. ski team member. And through her own experiences and recognizing the need to empower young girls and teach them confidence, she co-founded Z Girls in 2014. And they have been raising up a revolution of empowered and confident girls ever since. You don't want to miss this inspiring episode. Here's my conversation with Jilyne. Jilyne, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. You are such an inspiration, and there's so many things that I want to talk about. I, of course, want to talk about Z Girls and all the great work that you're doing. But before we get into that, I would love to rewind and hear a little bit about your own story. I know you have an incredible sports career that I definitely want to talk about, but I would love for you to rewind and just share a little bit about your own life, your own story, your own journey, and maybe how you got into sports.
Totally. I am the third of 4 kids in my family. So I have 2 older brothers, a younger sister. We're all relatively close in age. And so I pretty much grew up wanting to do anything my brothers did. And so if they played soccer, I played soccer. If they played tackle football, I played tackle football. And so ultimately they were ski racers, became ski racers, and I wanted to do and follow anything they did. So that I pursued that as well. Honestly, I don't even remember making the choice. I think it just was something our entire family did. But, I grew up in a very extroverted, competitive family. And so I think if you had met me growing up, you would have thought I was really confident and sure of myself. And maybe this is foreshadowing to what I now do professionally with Z Girls, but I struggled a lot with self-doubt and insecurity, as so many girls, so many individuals do. But I was so grateful to have the outlet of sports and the outlet of working towards a goal, and working with a team. And because I played soccer and I also ski raced. So I did both an individual and a team sport, which I absolutely loved. And so I had such a wonderful childhood of that, and, look forward to chatting about, what came of that. But that's kind of my background. Grew up in Seattle, Washington as well.
So you kind of stumbled into sports, right? You kind of followed it. It's what your family did. And then you went on to have this incredible career in sports. How did that kind of progress from it just being Oh yeah, it's something that I do. To then you became a 7-time NCAA All-American, former US ski team member. How did that all unravel? How did that all unfold?
Yeah. So Um, I again followed my brothers anywhere they went. And so I very much credit them to making me a super strong skier because they would lead me to places on the mountain I shouldn't have been and would leave me. And so the only way to get down was to follow them. And so I think they just made me like a really solid skier. And so when we all started ski racing, it came pretty naturally to me. And I loved being on the mountain, being outdoors, getting to do a sport that our entire family could participate in together. We love that. Um, and it evolved. I think even if you ask my parents, they wouldn't even have an answer to you for how two or three of their four kids became US ski team athletes. And I mean, I couldn't even fully answer it, but I think my short explanation is, um, I loved the sport and kept seeing success, and so I put more and more work into it. And I think growing up, I didn't even know you could go to college and ski race. And so when I was in high school and looking at scholarships and where you could go, I discovered how amazing collegiate ski racing is. And so I actually didn't have the goal of making the Olympics. I didn't even think that would be possible for me. And so my goal was going to ski race in college. And so when I ended up going to the University of Vermont and skiing there for 2 years, and it was actually from college that I made the US ski team, which is what at the time was not common. Most people would go straight from high school to taking years off, to going straight to the US ski team. Like it just wasn't a common outlet. But honestly, college for me was such a confidence builder because at the University of Vermont at the time they were the best women's team in the country. And they were all women that were 5, 6 years older than me and were retired from the US ski team. And so they made me better because they were so strong. And so, I mean, to talk about being an example of using competition to inspire you rather than threaten you, I was inspired by how good they were, and they pushed me and made me so much better. So I made the US ski team from college, and that's where that had started. But I was on the US ski team for 1 year, and then I ended up going back to school and back to college, and I raced again for the University of Vermont to finish out my time there.
I would have to say that probably one of your proudest moments in life was being on the US ski team. Would that be right? If you could pick one thing throughout your sports career that you're most proud of, would that be it?
You'd think that, but honestly, I think if I had to talk about my most proud moment in my ski racing career, it was getting second place at NCAA's. And I think it was because that was the only time in my career where I know I gave it 150%, my best shot. And I was so proud of how I did. And yes, I got second, but it is the most proud I've ever been because, and maybe we'll get into this, but my time on the US ski team was actually really challenging. I struggled a lot mentally, physically, and it ended up being one of the things that motivated me to start Z Girls, which is a confidence building program. But internally, I was not in a great place. So externally, I think you look at it, you're like, come on, US ski team, you're the top of the top. But I think that just shows what really goes on inside as opposed to what it looks like on the outside.
I remember a couple of years, it's interesting that you shared that of your own experience, because I remember a couple of years ago when Simone Biles stepped out of the Olympics and she talked about those exact same things, like things she was going through mentally, and everybody was just blown away. They were like, no, Simone, come on, you're like the best of the best.
you've done it before, you can do it again. All of us on the sidelines were like, wait, what's happening? But I thought it was so powerful that she did that. She used her platform, she used her voice. And of course, because she had been a part of the Olympics for multiple years, I think it probably gave her a lot more courage to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to protect my mental health. I'm going to protect my body, my own health, and sit this one out. I thought that was so profound, because we don't think about that as people that just watch the Olympics, or maybe we've been a part of sport, we've played sports, but we don't know what that pressure is like and what that experience is like. And so I'm glad that you shared that. And I'm sure you share that all the time in the work that you're doing, where it's like, we might see somebody who's at the top and say, wow, that's amazing. And we don't really know what they're experiencing, what they're going through.
And what a gift she gave the world, not in her gold medals, but what a gift in being vulnerable about the human struggle that the best in the world face, that all of us face. I mean, I think that's one of the best things she's ever done. And I'm so grateful. I mean, all of us were touched by it. A lot of people were confused, but how many of us said, oh, wow, me too. Like, wow, I don't feel as alone. If you can have the best of the best, be the best in the world at your craft, and still have the same human struggles that every single one of us have.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And this is what I want to transition into the great work that you're doing with Z Girls. I think it's so important for us to share our stories, right? What a gift the world that we can share our struggles, our difficulties. Yes, of course, our joys and great things that are happening to us. And we see that happening with all of our friends, where we see the great things that are happening. We also see their struggles, and what a gift it is in this life to really walk alongside one another and learn from one another. And sometimes we're not courageous enough to stand up and say, you know what, I need to take a break. But it's so beautiful in those moments where you see someone, and like, I was just cheering for her. At first I was like, wait, what's going on? Because it was something that I hadn't seen before, at least so publicly. And then you're like, oh, bravo, this is amazing. Like, this is what needs to happen. And it opened up so many conversations. And I think that, to your point, I think it opened up so many opportunities for sports stars, for people, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, to speak up about mental health, and also be okay with saying, you know what, I need to take a step back. I need to protect myself.
And they did. They followed suit. Other athletes felt like they had permission to say, oh, I don't have to put on this facade anymore of being perfect, of being immune to not struggling. I think the conversation, and even you and I are now talking about this, like, I think it started a global conversation that needed to happen, that was far too late, but just the right time. So I'm grateful that, we get to have these conversations now.
Same. I think it's so important. It's so important for us to have these conversations, and really to highlight. That's why One Girl Revolution exists, to have these conversations, but also to have these conversations, but also to highlight organizations like Z Girls and all the great work that you're doing. So you sort of alluded to the fact that your experience with the Olympics, and I'm sure there were other things too, that kind of led to the start of Z Girls. What was that spark moment, or like, what were the spark moments that happened that led you to saying, you know what, I need to start something. This was my own experience. I need to use it for good, and I need to use it to empower other girls.
So to back up, as I shared, when I was younger, I struggled with self-doubt. I struggled with my own confidence and my own self-belief. I didn't know at the time that I had a confidence problem. I didn't know at the time what it was that was happening to me. I felt like there was something wrong with me. And I didn't know there was a way out of your own sort of internal thought patterns until I was coaching well after I retired. I was coaching girls and boys, and I would give feedback to both of them. And the girls would give me responses like, I can't do that, or I don't have what it takes, or that's not possible. And I would respond with, well, you haven't even tried, and I would dig deeper into like what was going on in their mind. They'd say things like, I hate my body. I hate the way my thighs are, because as a ski racer, you're going to have strong big thighs. They're not going to fit in skinny jeans. I remember that experience. I hated it when I was younger, but those strong thighs get me down the mountain. So it was in coaching that I noticed how young these internal dialogues start. I was working with 11, 12, 13-year-olds that were talking to themselves in such a critical, like, manner that I just was like, be kind to yourself. You're 11. And it was the same things I was saying to myself in my teens, in my 20s, in my now 30s. And that's where the light bulb happened of like, wait a minute. There has got to be a program that teaches young athletes, young individuals, young girls, how to build confidence, because it's a skill that you can learn, but they don't teach it in school. It's not a subject. So I was seeking a program for my athletes to start, and I couldn't find one. And so I got together with another fellow US ski team alum, and we were like, well, let's start it. It doesn't exist. Let's build it. And we honestly built it as a pilot program for these local ski racers. I don't think we ever knew it would become what it was. I think we had hoped, right? But it was really the pure desire was, okay, let's give these girls tangible skills to help them build confidence and serve as a role model, a vulnerable, honest role model that tells the honest side of what's going on between your ears, what's happening in your head, so they don't feel crazy, so they don't feel alone when they experience those same things. So this was 2012, maybe 2011, when we started this pilot program, and it went so well. It was like a 6-week program. I think we met the girls once a week. And afterward, the parents and the girls were like, okay, what's next? Like, you can't, that can't be it. And so we, at the time, were like, okay, maybe this is something bigger. Maybe this is something that more people need. And so we took this idea of Z Girls and entered it into the business plan competition at the University of Washington here in Seattle. We ended up getting second place out of 92 teams, a little bit of funding. So we got like $25,000 of funding. But one of the final judges of this competition came up to us afterward, and it's like a Cinderella story. I love telling this, and said, listen, if you mean everything you just pitched on stage, I want to make sure this happens. Come meet with me. And so we met with him, a week later, 2 weeks later, and he wrote a check to help us start Z Girls and make this happen. And that was like the catalyst that we're like, we're doing this. It's full steam ahead. Let's go. So that was 2013, and we became a nonprofit in 2014.
That's amazing. And I love that story too, because it just takes one, right? It takes one person to believe in what you're talking about. And I think there are so many women that have ideas, and so many of the women that we've highlighted on here, nonprofit organizations where they have this incredible idea and they're struggling, trying to get somebody to believe in them. And in reality, it just takes one person, and this spark moment happens. And it's like, I just need one person to believe in what I'm saying. And then it takes off. And what you've been able to build and what you've accomplished since Z Girls started is absolutely incredible. And I want to get into all of that. How do you get the name though for Z Girls? How did that come about?
Oh, it was such a struggle. So such a great question. So the Z in Z Girl stands for zero limitations. So that was the inspiration, is like, there are things in life that are going to hold you back. Externally, the world is going to tell you you can't. People are going to tell you you can't. Things are going to get in your way. But it's time to stop limiting yourself. And that is our goal, is to give you the tools to make it so that you live with self limitations, because we all stop at ourselves, and it's time to stop doing that. Yeah. But a lot of people think it's, maybe Z generation, but, we loved the zero limitations, and also easy to remember, last letter in the alphabet. So it's been Z Girls from the very beginning, and we just love it.
I think it's such a cool name. It's just like, and all your branding is so cool. And I will, of course, put your website and all your social media in the show notes so people can easily find everything that you're doing. But I just think it's such a cool name.
Watch One Girl Revolution's Emmy-nominated short documentary, The Girl Inside, on our YouTube channel or at onegirlrevolution.com. The Girl Inside features a poignant look at the stories of incarcerated women within Cook County Jail and a life-changing academic course taught by Dr. Laura Biaggi called Storytelling as a Healing Art. This short documentary reunites Dr. Biaggi with 5 of her former students for a special one-day course on the transformative power of our stories and our voices. And what is revealed is the girl inside. Watch the Emmy-nominated short documentary The Girl Inside today on YouTube or at onegirlrevolution.com.
I want to talk about Z Girls. For people that are listening, what is Z Girls? And tell me all about the work that you do.
Yeah, so we're a confidence building program for middle school girls. And the way we do that is we teach tangible, easy to understand skills. And it's all taught by professional and Olympic female athletes. And we have athletes teach it. And a lot of them are retired, perhaps on their first careers, beyond, athletes. They're more than just athletes. And the reason we have these women teach this is not because we want all Z Girls participants to become professional athletes. It's because, as we were talking about before, there's something so profound about someone who is the best in the world at what they do saying, I struggle too. Here's where I struggled. Here's all the real failures that I had that you didn't see online. Here's the struggles. Here's the things I had to overcome. That is why it's taught by these women, is because that element of having a role model to teach this, that helps these girls not feel alone in their very, very normal, critical, everyone's critical of themselves. Everyone has quote unquote negative self-talk. We don't even really like to say positive or negative. And put labels to that, but it's the best way to understand that everyone is hard on themselves. But it's about getting the tools and learning how to use those tools. You can get yourself out of those moments, but also so you can learn to trust yourself. You can learn to believe in yourself. You can actually take action steps to build confidence, because it's not something that's going to passively happen. You have to build confidence in yourself. We don't build confidence for girls. We give them the tools to build confidence for themselves.
That's such an important differentiation. And to your point, just talking about how we all can use these skills, because we all have these moments in life where I'm not good enough, or why not me? Or social media has been one of the greatest things in our world to connect people, to inform people, all the different things. We can talk about all the positives, but then of course, on the negative side, it's been so bad for confidence and, isolates people. And there are so many negatives. It's like double-sided coin. But especially for young girls, I cannot imagine. We all had a difficulty growing up and difficulties growing up, but I cannot imagine in this day and age being in middle school and dealing with social media, dealing with everything that we have that's, even louder and even more constant with social media. And we're seeing everything is we're drinking through a fire hose when it comes to news media, but then kids are dealing with that with their peers, where they're seeing, they're hanging out without me, or I'm not good enough, or, oh, look at so-and-so, she's so pretty. And I don't think that I'm pretty. There's so much that they're dealing with. And so I think what Z Girls is doing is just so incredible and so important and so needed in our world.
It is so hard to witness these girls on social media and struggling with it, because I struggle with it. Adults struggle with it. It is addicting, and it is proven to harm your mental health. And so for us to expect our youth to know how to navigate it and to be able to have their self-worth and confidence still intact while spending hours on these devices that are designed to be addictive, and also just erode their sense of self-worth. And, how I like to explain it is, when I have 2 young daughters, so I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old daughter, they are still all in their feelings in their body. They don't look externally for validation yet, right? It's all about what's going on for me and how can I trust my body. And around 11, 10, 11, 12 years old, girls start to look externally for validation. Am I okay? Do you like me? Do I get approval? And social media has made that so much worse because everyone else looks externally on the outside a certain way and it doesn't show what's really going on. So they have this unattainable end goal and it's impossible to get. And so they're in these situations that are so hard to navigate. And so, we're really trying to remind them to come back to themselves, to remind them to be inspired rather than threatened by each other, because social media is competitive. You look at who's who and who's going where and what their lives look like. So getting girls to turn inward instead of externally, because everything's external, if that makes sense. That's what we try to bring up to, because I'll be honest, like social media is not going away, right? Like our solution isn't ignore social media or don't be on it. That's not where the world is going. So if this is our reality, how can we give girls the tools to navigate that and not have it just completely erode all of their confidence and self-worth?
What I love so much about what you're doing too is that it's not just one and done, right? It's not just okay, cool, come to this like 2-day camp or 2-day conference. No, you're actually teaching the skills, which is something that I feel like all of us need. I love going to events and seeing things, but a lot of times you go and you get all revved up and you walk out of there so confident and so excited, and whatever your project is or whatever is going on in your life, you just feel, I'm confident again. I was cured of everything that I had going on. And then 2 days later, you kind of come through to the other side and you're like back to square one. And so one thing that's great about the work that you're doing is, and I know you talk about it a lot on your website, where it's like in 4 weeks you build confidence, but you're teaching them skills. So I'd love for you to talk about, there's kind of 4 main skills that you focus on. Can you talk about the 4 main skills and kind of how that 4-week program works?
Totally. So there's 4 topics that we teach over the 4 weeks. And the first one is develop a growth mindset. So a growth mindset is, it was developed by psychologist Carol Dweck. And it really is the belief that you can improve your qualities and skills with time and effort. The opposite of growth mindset is a fixed mindset, which is the belief that you are stuck this way. You are born this way. You are either smart or not. You are either strong or not. So many of us get stuck in a fixed mindset. So we teach girls how to channel and lean towards a growth mindset. It's okay if you have a fixed mindset here and there, but the world is going to keep trying to give you labels of what you are that's stuck. And so having that mentality of, listen, I can improve and grow my qualities with time and effort. There's a couple ways we do that. The biggest one that I think your listeners could use, everyone can use this in their life, is adding the word yet to any permanent statement. So I'm never going to figure this out. I haven't figured this out yet, right? Or, I'm never going to get that promotion, or I'm always going to be this way. Yet. Just add the word from permanent to growth. You're just not there yet. So that's one of the biggest ways that we help them, is just what you say. There's little things that we teach them that's just little simple mindset shifts, but you'll hear it now too when other people say those kind of things. The second is building your self-worth. So as I shared, self-worth can only come from within. And the only place you can build it is within you. A lot of girls, a lot of people look externally for their self-worth. I did this. I am the worst at this growing up, because my self-worth came from validation from my coaches. It came from doing well in my sport, which I did. but what happened to my self-worth when I retired? What happened when I got injured? What happened when I didn't make the US ski team again? My self-worth crumbled. It wasn't on sturdy ground. It wasn't developed from within me. So we help girls develop their worth from within themselves. And there's a couple ways that we do that, and tools that we give them to remind them of that, because it's so easy to look externally. I think the biggest one, again, that your listeners or anyone can take away from this conversation is competition and comparison. Really resist being threatened by it and be inspired by it. I think we waste so much time in thinking about how someone else got there, how we wish we could be there. We're comparing our day one to their day 1,000, right? They've been doing this for 15 years and I want to be there now. Be inspired by that. Don't be threatened by everyone else, right? So turning inward. The third week is all about taking on challenges and learning from failure. Challenges and failure are two things that are inevitable in life. As a mother, I can speak to how impossibly hard it is to watch your kids struggle and fail. You want to intervene, you want to make it not possible, but we all know the best way to growth, the only way to growth, is to experience challenges, experience failure, and learn from them. And so we have to change our relationship with fear, or change our relationships with failure, so we're not afraid of it. And we love saying this to every girl in Z Girls. You do not have to be fearless. You just have to be brave. Don't think that people that achieve something great in life have no fear. They do. They just choose to be brave and step forward through those challenges anyway. So if you can channel that bravery and let fear be there, you got the tools you need to get through those things. And then learning from every single failure. It is awful. It is painful. It is brutal. But I promise it makes you stronger. And all of us learn from it. It's the best way to learn. So we help them change that relationship with those things. And then the last week is all about advocating for yourself. We spend 3 weeks working internally on your mind, which is invisible. And so to tie it all together, you have to give girls the tools to have a voice, to advocate for themselves, and a framework, a formula to do that. Because it's easy to say, like, hey, speak up. Well, how? When I'm feeling a conflicted feeling, or when I'm upset with my friend. So we give a formula, and I'll share it. Everybody can use it from here on out. It's a formula called the I feel formula. And it's I feel blank. So I feel, what's the emotion? When, what's the situation? And because. So I'll tie it together for you. So I feel upset when you didn't invite me to your birthday party, because you're one of my best friends and I love spending time with you. That is so different than saying, I'm mad at you because you didn't invite me. Or I'm just not even saying anything at all and ignoring your friend or feeling left out. And even for the other person who's experiencing that conversation with you, to hear your friend explain it in a way that's so human. And so like, wow, I didn't even know that's how you took that. We give girls a framework because communicating is hard and it's challenging. But we give them tools so that they can advocate for themselves, especially when it's hard.
It's so important. Scripts are such an important thing. And I had a friend who taught me as an adult. I was an adult living in DC, and she would always talk about scripts, how a lot of times, and I did like stand up and different things when I, acting when I was in high school, kind of lost sight of that. And she, as an adult, was like teaching women how to write scripts exactly like that, how to advocate for themselves, but also when you're in different situations. And it always helps me to actually sit down and say, okay, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, or I'm experiencing this, or I'm just sad. And sitting down, like, why am I sad? And like breaking that down. And then if you have to have a difficult conversation with someone, or you have to be courageous and brave and stand up and speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself, then you sort of have this framework. So I love, those are things that, all four of those things are things that these girls are going to use the rest of their lives.
I also think you said such a great thing, and I want to point it out, which is you had to sit down and recognize what you were feeling. I think that's key too, because pausing and saying, what is it that I'm actually feeling? Am I upset? Am I angry? Am I jealous? Am I mad? Like what? And so we actually have a feeling wheel that helps them identify what they feel. But I'm glad you said that, because I think so many of our youth, and you know what? No, I'm putting myself in there too. I don't know what I'm feeling most of the time. And so to pause and really reflect and say, like, okay, what is it that I'm feeling, so that I can explain it or I can communicate it, is huge.
I mean, I feel like in this chapter of my life, I'm learning to do that more and more, Jilyne, because I often men oftentimes, talk about how they become Hulk, like they turn into Hulk. Well, I become Xena warrior princess. Like when I get pissed off, my husband talks about it. He's like, you turn into Xena. Like, I don't know what happens. Like you just like morph. And usually it has to do with like somebody's done someone that I love wrong. And so I have to compose myself. And so that's what I'm learning. I'm like, all right, what am I feeling? Like, I feel like a little kid, right? Like people train like preschoolers how to do this stuff. What are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? But the reality is we all need that. Like we all need to kind of step back from a situation and say, why am I feeling this way? And same with like, back to talking about social media. We see so many things. I've talked to a couple of friends recently that are new moms, and they're like, I just feel like everybody else is they're posting all these like amazing things. There's these amazing moms who are cooking these, world-class meals for their baby. And I can just barely like throw together macaroni and cheese, and they feel like they're not being a good mom. Like, you are being a good mom. You're trying your best. You're doing the best you can. And so we all need those checkpoints, where it's like, okay, what is that? What am I actually feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And kind of break it down.
And how am I reacting to it? I mean, even when you just said that, I was like, for Halloween this year, I put my two girls in like leggings and I put cat ears on them, like very minimal Halloween costumes. And I'm seeing all these elaborate, amazing homemade costumes. And I was like, Jill, do not compare yourself. Do not compare yourself. This is not a competition. These are toddlers. But it's there, right? And just acknowledging it and being okay with that, but being able to identify it so it doesn't have power over you. Right? Like, it's okay. We're not gonna prevent girls from experiencing emotions or feelings. We're not gonna prevent girls from having, negative self-talk or being hard on themselves. I don't think those are avoidable. But I think if we could just pause, if we could stop, if we could understand ourselves better so that those things don't take control of us, is the key. And I'm a living example of that too. And I say that when I teach this to the girls, I'm like, I'm in this with you. I do this work. I have to constantly work on my own confidence and check myself, because I am the worst offender of being a perfectionist. I compare myself to everyone else. And, my self-worth, as I shared, was all wrapped up into what I do and how I perform. So I'm combating those constantly. And if I don't keep those in check, they get the best of me. And, so it's a lifelong journey. It's not something you just master and it's done. It's like, no, you got to work on this just like anything else, staying in shape, working on your sport, your craft, whatever you're doing. It takes energy and time, but it's worth it. It's always worth it.
Well, and we can all be a good example to the rest of these girls too, right? So we don't even realize how many people are looking at us, and even our peers, right? Where it's like, this is how I'm dealing with things. And I love seeing that on social media. That's such a positive thing, where people share, even like the conversation that we're having right now, where they share different aspects of that. And like, hey, I was experiencing this, and this is how I dealt with it. And this is where, this is what kind of helped me, sharing information in that way. Jilyne, I have two questions for you about how do you get connected to the girls that you work with? And then also, how do you get so many amazing sports stars? I was like reading through your website, seeing all these amazing badass women. How do you get all of them involved in the work that you're doing?
Well, I'll start with the girls, because we love them. So we work with a lot of schools. So most of our girls come either referral, word of mouth, a girl has been through the program, loved it, told a friend, or schools. We're in 23 states around the country. And honestly, we're remote, so anyone can join all over the country, all over the world. So that's mostly how we find our website, zgirls.org, or social media, but majority of the time it's through a school. And our athletes are incredible. If you go to our team and you see that, if you go to our website and you see that team, I mean, it's world class. And they all volunteer their time. So these athletes have found us from a friend of a friend. I obviously have connections with the US ski team. Lindsey Vonn was one of our very first partnerships. And then Sue Bird was also, so I don't think it hurt that they were like, whoa, Z Girls is cool. This is awesome. You should check it out and partner. So all of the women that are involved with Z Girls volunteer their time selflessly. And I think it's because this is the program we all wish we had when we were that age. So I'm not going to lie, it's pretty therapeutic to do this work. I think I selfishly do it to heal parts of myself that I wish I had, going through this when I was that age.
If you are enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. We have new inspiring episodes coming out every week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast today.
Is there a story or two? I'm sure there are so many stories since Z Girls was founded, so many stories that you could tell. So many stories of girls that have been touched by that, like you've been touched by, like that you just have been able to work with so many different girls who now are these amazing women, and probably some of them have gone on to be sports stars or athletes in their own right, or go on to do all kinds of amazing things. But because this podcast is all about stories, is there a story or two of a girl that's worked with you that you feel like really kind of exemplifies the work that you're doing, or is a great example of why the work that you're doing is so important?
Honestly, the stories that came to mind right when you were asking that aren't the ones, because we have Olympians, that have like become Olympians or become incredible athletes after our program. Like when we were, they were first in our program. So 2012, 2013, like Katie Hensian was one of our first Z Girls. She's on the US ski team currently. Those stories are amazing, but those aren't the ones that like come to mind for me. It's so before our gala, we have a gala every March, and last January, I interviewed probably 25 of our girls. And I just, put a ask out there like, hey, I'm doing all these interviews. Would you be interested? A bunch of girls responded. And I really got to know these girls. What are they interested in? What do they do with their time? Like, what are they struggling with? They're the ones that come to mind because it's the everyday struggles that I hope Z Girls helps with. So one of the things I asked them in that interview was, what is your hope for other girls in the future? And what I love about that question is it got them to settle into like, okay, now I'm a role model. Now I get to wish something for the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds coming up. And all of them said a version of, I hope they can trust themselves. I hope they don't doubt themselves. I hope they love themselves. It's all the things that they were feeling and wishing they had for themselves. They were wishing for future girls. And I know that's not a specific story, but that just stands out to me as like, these girls don't want to deal with these struggles. They don't want to be stuck in this self-doubt, in this self-hate, and they want to love themselves. They want to be supportive. They want to not compete with each other. They want to have this community. And about bullying, what we talk about is all of us have the capacity to be a mean girl and to bully because it comes from a place of insecurity. And so the way that we can connect and love one another is by being our full selves, accepting each other. So anyway, that's kind of what comes up for me is like those few girls I got to talk to that shared, I use Z Girls at school because there was a friend sitting by herself at the lunch table and I could see myself being lonely if that were me. So I went over and said hi. And we sat with her. And like, that's such a small act, but like such a big act because that girl wasn't alone anymore, you know? Or there was another girl that shared about getting dressed for school in the morning, and she was picking herself apart and hating like the way she looked. And she paused for a moment. It was like, wait a minute, what can my body do for me rather than what does it look like? What does my body do? And like that little brief moment, like that quick change is everything, right? So these little stories of small micro changes that hopefully create these stronger, you know, women that are going to be our future leaders is exactly why we do this work.
It's the ripple effect, right? Like I just think that the work that you're doing is so critical. And no matter where these girls go on, whatever they end up going on to be in life, these are all skills that they'll be able to take with them. And the impact of that, I can only imagine. And the reality is you'll only see a glimpse, a glimmer of the impact that Z Girls is having or will have, because it's those little moments, right? Going and sitting with another girl at a lunch table or little conversations. And the reality is we can all do that. We can all do the little things that can have a massive ripple effect and can impact the world. So speaking of that, I want to know, where do you hope that Z Girls goes from here? In your dream of dream worlds, 5 or 10 years down the line, where do you hope Z Girls goes from here?
So my hope for Z Girls is that we are a household organization that serves girls anywhere, that we are a resource for building confidence, for building self-worth, for building resilience. And we can help both girls and caregivers, because it's a work of all of us. So, you know, we put as many resources out there. We have this program. I mean, 80% of our girls pay nothing to be in the program. So, you know, for us, we want zero barriers to entry at all times. So I'm just hoping we can grow and support all the girls out there that don't believe in themselves, that struggle, because this is something that should be taught in schools. Everyone deserves to believe in themselves and to know how to do that.
Do you still ski? Random question. In person, you do? Okay.
I ski every single weekend. And honestly, my little 2-year-old and 3-year-old girls ski as well.
Stop it. That's the cutest thing.
Most adorable thing in the world. I don't care if they become competitive ski racers. We just love getting outdoors and being on the mountain as a family. I live in Seattle, Washington. It is very gray in the winter. And so being able to get to a white mountain on the weekend is my mental health savior. So that's the main motivation.
That's awesome. The only time that I've ever been skiing, and I live in Michigan, so you're inspiring me to go back and ski more. But the only time that I've ever been skiing is in Vermont, in Stowe. And so I just started like throwing myself down the mountain and figured out how to ski. So you're inspiring me, and I know you're going to inspire so many other people just to get back in the mountain and ski. So what can people do to support your great work? I'm so excited to have you on and have you share about Z Girls. What can people do to support the work of Z Girls?
Two biggest ways. One is, if you know a middle school girl, send her to zgirls.org. Let's get her in the program. Let's get her these skills. And number two is donate. So we are a nonprofit. As I shared, 80% of our girls pay nothing to be in the program. So we rely on the funding and generosity of the public to help make these resources free and accessible. So we're doing an end of year giving campaign, and it determines how many girls we're able to serve and how we're able to grow.
I will be sure to put your website and social media links and make it really easy for people to get in touch with you and find ways to support you. And I always say that the free and easy way for people to support any organization is just to follow you on social media and share. Because, you know, I hadn't even heard of Z Girls until we got connected. And I know that that's so many other people, like you just never know, even young girls need the work that you're doing. So I encourage everybody to share the work that you're doing, talk about it, share this episode. But yeah, it's just absolutely incredible. And then I have kind of a practical question, I guess, for everybody who's listening. What can we all do to emulate your work? Of course, we want people, if they know young girls, to go through your program, but what can we do in our day-to-day lives to really empower girls in the same way that you are?
I would say this is what we tell the parents. The best way to help others learn this is to be the example yourself. So model it. Model catching yourself. Oh, wow, that was a really fixed mindset statement. I could rephrase that. Or, model what it looks like to communicate in an effective way. Like, wow, I was really feeling angry. I think I overreacted. I'm really sorry for that. Or, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I think I actually need a few minutes to calm down. Or, just being able to model it as opposed to just giving advice, I think will teach those around you what it looks like to be vulnerable, honest, and check in with yourself and share what you're thinking. Share what's going on between your ears so that it makes the invisible visible.
So powerful. And it's just the little things that we do and how we think about ourselves too, that can be reflected in how we walk around. And that's one thing that I think about is like, how do we carry ourselves and what are other little girls seeing when they look at us? So, Jilyne, you are a one girl revolution. And that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast, and all the amazing athletes that are involved in Z Girls and all the girls that are involved in Z Girls are also one girl revolutions. I'm a firm believer that every single woman and girl is a one girl revolution, and she has the power to change the world through her life. But I'm curious to know, who's a one girl revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
I have to cheat and say two. It's my two daughters. They have been the biggest mirror and lesson to me in my life. And I think, I look at them and see qualities in myself, and I want them to love themselves. And the only way for them to do that is for me to model it. So they won't catch me looking in the mirror, picking myself apart, because I want them to love themselves. And if I'm picking myself apart, that's a piece of them. So they are definitely my biggest, role models and teachers.
That's so beautiful. I can't wait to see where they go through life. I'm sure that they're going to be powerhouses just like their mama.
Oh, goodness, they're the best.
So I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. Yes, you have everything you need inside of you. And if every girl, every woman could trust herself, her intuition, who she is, this world will be a much, much better place.
Amen to that. Jilyne, thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you so much.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.